response was electric. It was instant, total engagement.
Then bam, I said, take out your phones and let's try something. The students said today's interactive tutorial was by far the most fun exercise I've done at campus throughout these 4 years.
I just wanted to try it out, and I thought to myself, I pre-told them obviously to bring their phones so that everybody had their phones with them, and if they didn't have a smartphone, to bring a computer, but I needed everybody to have that. So I made sure that they at least knew that. And just before that, the entire class showed up. It was incredibly insane. They all showed up. There was people sitting on the floor in front here. I couldn't believe it.
So someone wrote, pardon my colloquialism, but that was awesome.
Made me understand how powerful the technology is as a way of teaching.
It's easy. It's really easy.
We should have done this from the beginning.
Well, this experience has taught me to teach with technology rather than use technology.
For them, it was a very meaningful learning experience, that something had clicked.
The feedback that I got was, please, can we do this again?
It's going to be like it's spreading, I think, in a sense, like wildfire.
We didn't feel like we were learning.
They were applying their mind right here, right now, in the moment, live in the moment.
Yeah, just do it.
Today we're going to be talking with some leading academics who are pioneering the way in teaching with technology and blended learning. So we're at the School of Law, and we're going to be talking to some people who have taken an early initiative in all of these things and are moving the whole agenda on with technology and teaching and some of the exciting things that we can do with it. So we want to explore why they got into this, what were the issues, was it easy, what was hard, and also how their students have responded. So we're going to have a short session on discussing blended learning here at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Why did you want to learn? Why did you want to have a new way of teaching? What was the drive or the impetus to have a new approach to teaching?
Look, I'm always excited to try new things, and I'd actually seen you before many years ago when you were speaking about Edmondo. So that had got me excited about these techniques. Just never really knew how to go about it. And I found in our classrooms that it's just becoming increasingly difficult to get students to talk. The classes are big, they don't want to raise their hand. Even if you are trying your very best to get them engaged and ask questions or work through problems, it's very, very difficult to get any kind of discussion going, let alone any excitement. So I wanted to try something that would bring that in.
Yeah, sure. I think student participation was a big factor in persuading me to try a new way of teaching and lecturing and doing tutorial exercises. And also, next year will be my 10th year of lecturing, and I felt a new approach might just invigorate me to try new things and start a new decade of teaching in some way, in an innovative way. But student participation, as Dusty said, was a big thing. We wanted to get the students more interactive in the work. We wanted to encourage more participation, more critical thinking around, and we wanted to hear what they were saying, not just sitting passively in a class and having a traditional stand and deliver lecture style.
Yeah, the same kind of for me, but for me, because I'm a new academic, it's not like there are teaching styles that I was aware of before, but for me it was the way that I learned when I was a student, which is not so long ago, and obviously considering how much has happened over time and the technology that we had and how our phones stay in our hands. So I thought to myself, well, what if we incorporate that, because it's innovation with that, because if students like to have something else that they identify with, then communicating, because that's what you get. People don't communicate by talking anymore, even with your friends when you're sitting and having a coffee, everybody's on their phone. Yeah. So I thought to myself, well, if this is a way of life, then it could be a way of learning as well. And so I wanted to find out the various ways in which, you can still have students participating even when, they are chilling with their friends, and thinking to myself, I just remembered I saw something, and they can tweet about it or talk about it or, and upload it and have this discussion with me as their teacher. So I felt like, I wanted to participate in their daily lives, and that's why
So that's interesting, so though you've said similar things, you've also said different things. So Dusty's thing is, and I've heard that a lot, is that we are losing touch with our students in the classrooms. I've heard lots of people say we're getting such low attendance, and even if you have got attendance, there's just no life in that classroom anymore. Yeah. There's no, you ask, are there any questions, there's no response, and it's not a very productive learning environment. And that in itself is something that has to be addressed and a very important why. I think what Vishal was saying, which I also liked, is interestingly, it's not just for the students. It's lovely as a teacher, as an academic, as a lecturer, for ourselves to be like doing something that renews us. And then I like your one, which is basically, so I'm saying, well, it's more than just in the classroom. It's getting moving learning outside. It's even into informal learning, and all of a sudden, it's a whole new thing that opens up. They've only got so many hours in the classroom, and now all of a sudden, why does learning have to stop there? They're online all the time. They're doing things online. So it opens up a whole lot of other opportunities. All of you have tried different things, and we had a session where we looked at this activated classroom teaching approach, and there's these various layers from curation to conversation to correction to creation and chaos, and each of them can be used either separately or together in the classroom. There's lots of ways in which it can be done with lots of tools, and I know the three of you tried different things. How did you feel when you were putting something together and about to come into the class to try something new? How was that? Was it like confidence, a bit nervous, or what was it when you did it?
Well, from my side, I had a trial run with I had some graduate teaching assistants, and I actually had a trial run the day before to just double check the equipment works, to see that the sound works, and it was quite an exciting thing. And I got like a preview of what would come ahead the next day, because they seemed to be quite intrigued in it, and these are senior students, master students. So I felt a lot more confident going into the first time presenting it to the class, because I had a bit of a preview session. So I went into that next day feeling quite confident and it was a bit of a surprise to the students. I did not tell them that they're going to do any of this. It was just a normal tutorial session. They were under the impression that we were going to now put a case study on the board and have the traditional way of discussing it. And then bam, I said, take out your phones and let's try something new. So this was like a bewildering thing initially for the students, but they got settled in very, very nicely.
Was there anything in that session that you did with these on your sort of test run that you had to like now tweak, or were you okay with what you'd done? You could just sort of move it across to
I think that the app that I tried was so user friendly that there was no hiccups. The only thing that I was worried about was would the internet connection go off, and would the projector not work, the bulb blow up or something. But apart from that, the app was so easy to follow, and within minutes, everyone just figured out what they needed to do, and it worked fine. Yeah.
Oh, lovely. Dusty, how are you?
Okay, so I had the total opposite experience where I really wanted to do a test run and have everything set up, and nothing worked out to plan. So for me, I didn't sleep the night before I did the dry run. Maybe it was also that we were filming in the class, so yeah. I was very nervous about it. But the minute we did set up in class, it immediately was apparent that the students were really excited. They were so into it. They got it straight away. It was so easy to use.
What was the cause of you being nervous, besides the fact there were going to be a few cameras in the class?
Look, I think it was that I hadn't tried it before with the students. So for me, the big thing was, would the technology work? Would I be able to get it up on the screen? And it does work very seamlessly. It's no more difficult than just plugging in your laptop. And so, yeah, I guess the same things as you. We were just worried about technological failure. I actually came with my backup PowerPoint just in case.
So that's great. That's great advice. So if it doesn't work, there is another option. It's not the end of that lecture. It's not the end of that lesson. There can always be another way. Yeah. And this is something that I keep trying to talk about. I call it the beta mindset. That everything's in a constant beta state. It's improving, and it's the same with this. Don't expect perfection. You mentioned the internet. You have that. You come on, you connect, and it's just not working. And you say, you know what, today it's just not working. We'll try it tomorrow. We're going to switch to the slides, or we're just going to have it as a normal classroom discussion. And I think we've come from an era, and one of the pedagogies is the pedagogy of correcting. We've come from an era where we think things must be perfect. You had the perfect PowerPoint or the perfect overhead projector slides and you deliver them. We are now in an era where you don't have to have that. Bring something, try, put it together, and if it doesn't work, you know what, the student population is so used to being beta testers of every piece of software that comes out. If it doesn't work, they just move on to the next thing, work around it, try again tomorrow. And it's not easy as lecturing staff to do that. We think we must always deliver the perfect put together experience. And I think if we become aware of it, try it. It's okay to fail, because that's actually built into the learning for ourselves as well. Anything extra, Donna?
No, I think it's pretty much the same. Just feeling like I hope the internet doesn't, give up on me or whatever. But I don't think I was that nervous about it because I was excited preparing it. And I mean, I feel like because I like being online and using the internet, I just wanted to try it out. And I thought I pre-told them obviously to bring their phones so that everybody had their phones with them. And if they didn't have a smartphone, to bring a computer, but I needed everybody to have that. So I made sure that they at least knew that. And, just before that, the entire class showed up. Because usually they don't attend classes that much, but they all showed up, and my class was extremely packed for both groups. And I was, I didn't even know I had so many students in my class.
It was a big surprise.
Wow, where did you? Very big surprise. But no, it was. They responded pretty well, and the timing sort of felt small now, that we had such little time to do this, but they were very excited about it. I had very great reviews about that, and they responded extremely well to it.
So it's interesting that when you told them, and so all you had told them was you must bring your phones.
Yes, that's what I
and
told
that was
them.
enough of a hook to get almost the entire class to rock up.
Yes, it was incredibly insane. They all showed up. There was people sitting on the floor in front here. I couldn't believe it.
So if we want to fill up our lecture room, we just say, come with your phone.
Yes.
Now, what is absolutely ironic is when we was doing the session with Dusty, and I took a photo of it, behind, on the wall, there's a sign that says, don't do those, and make sure you have turned your phone off. And that is the traditional mindset. That device you must turn off and it's going to interfere. We know that doesn't happen. And so you've almost said the opposite. Bring your phone and I want it on. And the students are like, what? We're coming. So that's definitely astounding. So maybe my next question is if you can briefly tell me what you did in terms of your sort of blended approach in the classroom. What were you trying to do, or what did you do with the technology?
Well, the first thing, just before I tell you that, I didn't really fully, until I came to your seminars, I never really fully knew the meaning of blended learning. And the one thing that stays with me now after that seminar was it's teaching with technology and not just merely using technology. So that was the thing that informed me when I was trying to design an exercise, that I must use this just to teach with it rather than actually just using it. So it was a bit at the end of the semester, so we just had a few lectures left, so we couldn't pilot it throughout the semester. But what I did do was I teach a final year module, and it's an elective module. It's called Maritime Law. And in that module, I had a little tutorial exercise, and I decided to use the Kahoot app as a little, the quiz. I created a little quiz. And previously, the original method was I would give the students a written problem. They would go out and research that and prepare a lengthy written answer. And then we would have a discussion in the class, which often, as Dusty pointed out, it was very difficult to get discussion going. But what I did was, after I delivered the series of the lectures, I gave a quick summary and then said, well, pull out your phones and there's these questions that come up. And so it caught the students by surprise, but eventually this app was so interactive, the music came on, the stats came up, and the students found it quite hilarious to give themselves nicknames already. It had a kind of a chain effect on the students, because now, as opposed to previously where everyone, when I asked, right, who wants to answer this question 2 on this, everyone's heads went down like they didn't want to approach it. But now everyone is looking up at the screen. It had a chain effect. I think it had a bit of a competitive effect as well, because as soon as the results started coming up immediately, they saw someone's in the lead, and then the guys were looking who's the winner in the class, and so now they're paying such attention in that 30 seconds to, like, on the phone. It's like they were 100% there in that moment. I don't think there was a single student in the class that was out of that and just doing something else. And I think that it would have been the complete opposite if they're doing the traditional thing. There might have been someone just trying to write the answer on their work, and they'll decide to apply their mind to it later. But they were applying their mind right here, right now, in the moment, live in the moment, and that was really nice. The only thing that was quite funny was afterwards, which I need to work on, is that the student sent me an email saying you need to put on a game show host face, because I was not as good as Craig was doing it with encouraging and like, oh, someone's winning. So I was a bit too rigid with that. But I think as I spend more time with that, I think I also have a bit of a role to play in facilitating the thing as humorously and as interactively as I can. For one exercise, I made them try out the most dangerous writing app. I told them to put the 3-minute rule. So that was immediately after I lectured something on intense, doctrine on the law of the sea. And then I said, well, what do you remember about that? So we're not going to make you write a long tutorial exercise. Your exercise will be those 3 minutes in which you sit down and you just check. So there was absolute silence. Everyone was sitting. I could hear a bit of and frustration because somebody was kicked out after pausing too long. And I said, come on guys, you got strong thumbs to work on this. So those are the 2 apps that I tried, and it seemed to have been very well received, and they were 100% there, and all of them were participating in it.
Lovely.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. And I think what's exciting is as you said, it also does impact you as a lecturer. It does start to change our role, and I think that's part of what's happening here. And we want to bring us into a different role. As we want to bring the students more into the conversation, it does mean our role starts to change.
For me, I have a very big class. So I teach second years LLB, which are the law of dialect, and then we also have legal studies included in there. Those are third year legal studies. So it's a very big class, and it's very hard to just,
So what would big be?
Roughly? I think 212. If they are all there, it's 225, give or take. So there's a lot of them. Actually, no, they're 304. They're 304, but they never really attend together, so you don't know. But it's a very big class, and so, to do tutorials, sometimes they don't get the feedback that they expect. So I did 2 things. I used Moodle, which is obviously what the university has, but I used the discussion. So I set up a tutorial on their social media. So I asked them about the things that they tweet and to discuss how they get into trouble for that, for Facebook or Instagrams that I've posted. And, with dialect, the area that I was dealing with was personality rights. So their privacy and their defamation. And so it was very interesting to see how when they normally interact, because, you tweet all the time, you put something on Facebook, and the understanding of the fact that you've posted something is that it's just online. So that was very interesting for me, because then they discussed that and how they felt that they had participated in defamatory material at some point. And then I tried Kahoot. That was just amazing. That was just amazing because, all of them were there, and, there was just so much rowdiness. The biggest thing was controlling them and trying to get them to settle down so we can move on to the next one, because now they want to see where they shop, because I told them to put their student numbers so that we'd get a feedback at the end with all of them having participated. So no funny nicknames, and then you'd have some of them trying to put these funny nicknames, and they show up on the board because they're all excited about it. What I was trying to achieve, because I'm actually the teacher that wants to know that what I'm saying, you're hearing it, like right now. Okay. So I want response immediately. I want you to tell me, yes, no, we don't understand. So for me, it was everything that I have done so far. Did you actually hear me? And because Kahoot is just sort of multiple choice, then you need to remember speedily the cases that I've done. You need to remember what the principles are, and just quickly at that moment. And so I was able to get, and because they did so well, was that they actually heard me when I was speaking, even though they can't maybe articulate in a different way.
So did they know that was coming, that you were going to do this Kahoot thing on what? So they didn't know?
No, all they knew was to bring their phones.
Okay. Dusty, tell us about your experience.
Okay, so I teach a slightly different subject at 4th year. We teach civil procedure, so it's your classic, very boring subject. It's essentially a long list of dry rules and regulations. So I was a little bit unsure when I was prepping for it, like quite how to use Kahoot. It almost felt too fun. It was a lot of fun setting it up, and I was having a lot of fun playing with the apps. But you have that feeling like, okay, but we're doing something serious. Civil procedures are a little too serious for this. But I gave it a bit more thought, and I did Kahoot, but I used a different one to the quiz. I used a jumble. And that's quite nice because it shuffles up the answers, and it requires the students to sort them very quickly in 30 seconds into the correct order. And what was great was obviously the intense interaction, the excitement in the room was immediately palpable. The students were really engaged, as Vishal said, 100% of their attention. Really thinking about all of these different procedures in terms of the steps and really engaging their brains and totally excited, which got me excited as well. It was just so nice to see that in my classroom and have the opportunity to witness them enjoying themselves and engaging with the stuff. But what was also interesting was that when they were playing the game afterwards, a lot of students came up to me and said, this is the first time that I've really understood the connections between the different concepts. So it was great that the game, without actually telling them what it was doing, was forcing them to do the same thing I've been trying to tell them with words, which is think about the logical order in which things happen. And now, because it was a shuffle and a jumble, they were already automatically doing that through playing the game, and it worked really nicely.
So interestingly, you had told them with words those sort of things before. If they don't hear it at the moment, they were using some sort of app to put them into an order.
It was a game.
It changed totally.
They just got it intuitively without me even having to say anything. And they actually sort of came up afterwards to say how much it had suddenly made sense and how much it kind of electrified them to go back and study in a different way, which was great. And a lot of students have since been emailing me or corresponding about stuff and actually engaging with the material. So I can see that it's had an immediate impact. The other one we tried, which was also fun, was Spiral, which lets you have a discussion live in class where students can participate. So we were doing a revision lecture, and as Vishal said, the traditional setup for a revision lecture, much like a tutorial, would be that you give them a question and they're literally expecting a model answer. There'll be very little engagement. They'll write the answer down and note it to memorize it probably and cram it for the exam and hope that one is coming out. And then they'll ask you, is this in the exam? And when is the scope coming out? So we did it differently. I put the scenario on the board, but I didn't put the questions. And so we used Spiral for them to pose the questions. And obviously, as they're on their phone typing in questions, it pops up on the board, it gets a little bit crazy, you can see loads of different questions, you can start to see overlap. I can push things back if I want students to think about it more, but they can comment. What was quite interesting there was that quickly, in a couple of seconds, someone will put something up and 5 or 6 students will comment back. So there's a little bit of peer-to-peer engagement and discussion, which is also great to see.
And which is obviously something really difficult to do when you've got a class of even 20, 30, 40, 50, 100. You can't have everyone having a conversation. You can't have that student talking to that student and or them even talking to you, and all of a sudden you've opened up this wonderful conversation space where everyone's talking, yet it's actually manageable.
Yeah. And you know, my other sort of passion as a teacher is to reach out to those who just too afraid to ask the stupid question. And I think what's great about Spiral and all these apps is those students are completely empowered. Obviously they picked nicknames, so they didn't feel embarrassed to put up there, I have no idea what section it's about. Which is good, because then other students were commenting back, or I could comment back, and we could use that as a stepping point in, and they would never have asked their questions. So this was a great mechanism to just completely free up the class and actually get to understand not just what they do know, which is awesome, but what do they not know and where are they misunderstanding it. So it worked really nicely, and I'd like to try that one again. And then we did try a little bit of the correction approach in terms of putting up a wrong answer, and that also got their attention. So then I put up an answer that had been emailed to me by a student. Obviously I did it anonymously, and I had a little red warning at the top of the screen, you know, because the first instinct was they pick up their pens, they saw text, they must write this down word for word, and they're missing the big and red bold at the top, warning, this may be wrong. And so that was also quite interesting, because now they had to sort of sit on their phones, or they could put up their hand and say, well, what's wrong with what's up there? Think about, okay, hang on, why is that wrong? And start to really see for themselves where they can go wrong, the tricks, the ways they have to think their way through a problem question. So it was great. It was really fun. One thing that's, I don't know, we all teach the master's program as well, is like, it's just made me acutely aware of the critical thinking that you mentioned earlier. that we really want our students to engage critically, and they tend to assume that if they see something printed in black and white, that they must just learn that.
Yes.
That must be right.
That's all
it's
there is
printed
to
somewhere,
it.
and it's exactly what you're saying. We want them to interrogate everything that they read and think about it, and that's what they should be doing as lawyers.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and one of the points you make is very important. The whole approach we're trying to bring in here, this activated classroom teaching approach, is not only about the pedagogies, but it's about the 21st century skills they're trying to develop. You know, in any discipline, law included. The content you're learning is one thing, but it's quickly replaced, it's quickly changing. And if you're not developing critical thinking, if you're not developing creativity, if you're not developing the ability to collaborate, and on all these skills go, and metacognition, you're not going to be ready for the world you're entering. You know, and if we have a very passive type of teaching and learning approach, they don't develop those skills, you know, and they're going to be unprepared when AI and the bots are coming and everything else is coming to take us on. And those are very important, and it only happens when we start to engage them in these sort of more activated learning approaches. How did your class respond? That would be my next question, maybe Dr. Sama.
So the feedback that I got was really good. I think, you know, when students don't have to sit there and be bored and falling asleep, they are very excited. So most of it was that they were very interested in it and they'd like to try a lot more of it. But also it's, you know, we didn't feel like we were learning as it was, you know, as I usually stand in front of them and tell them. So it didn't feel more like they were learning. It felt like they were part of, you know, the teaching as well. Because then, you know, there was a question that I had done wrong. And so they stopped me and said, but ma'am, you know, this is an incorrect answer. You never said it like this. And so the fact that they picked that up, and it was an actual mistake, it was a general mistake that I hadn't seen when I was conducting or when I was preparing it. And so I understood how they wanted to be a part of that, like a part of that classroom, instead of just hearing me out tell them what to do. So the feedback that I got was, please, can we do this again? Really want to be a part of this. It's very interesting. But that's all that we did, was just a little bit of feedback. And what I got, and obviously, interestingly enough, they sent me emails afterwards. Ma'am, is there another way that we can, you know, discuss with you online, or we can try other activities? Could you put up any more of these activities online? So it was very interesting how they want to, you know, engage in the way that they know how, you know, because the thing is, I feel like the idea is that this is what they know, and we've moved into society where concentration is not that much anymore, you know. People don't want to focus on something for too long, so what can you do to make sure that they can still engage and then participate at the same time?
Oh, I really, what's totally powerful, lots of what you said, but one of the things that how they actually wanted to become part of the teaching process. And you think, well, if you can get your students to not just be students, but to be teachers, and I mean, one of the core tenets of any learning experience is vulnerability, to make yourself vulnerable, which is where correction comes in. And so even you as the teachers to say, yeah, I make mistakes, absolutely, and I love it if you teach me, you know, and the power of that process and of what then happens in that level of engagement, they suddenly see that you're empowered. You don't have to just sit here. If you've got something to say, you've got to critique, especially in law, you've got to be thinking, you know, and it's wonderful that you opened up that whole channel, and then to get the excitement of them to say, so what's next? You know, where are we engaging next? Where are we going to continue the conversation? You know, and those I think are probably some of the most exciting and valuable things to come out of it, because it's an ongoing learning opportunity. Right, Vishal?
Well, and just to build on that the last point there, in the final years, some of the students actually do a course called Teaching Legal Skills. So they actually tutor first year students, and they responded after we did this Kahoot exercises and this, they wrote back to me and said, hey, we can actually do this with our students, first year students, and it had a knock-on effect. It has this ripple effect. So now it's going to be like it's spreading, I think, in a sense, like wildfire, because the tutors are interested because they can see how easy it is. And they wrote to me and they particularly said, well, they had as final year students, almost peer-to-peer, they had difficulty in trying to get the first years to come out of their shell, to interact in the tutorial. One would often think that a first year student might be intimidated to chat to the lecturer in the classroom scene, where you suddenly ask a question, the entire class goes silent and you suddenly, am I asking the really stupid question or something? But here, it's actually something that would, so I felt that had the, follow up. They want to be a part of that teaching process as well. Then, I had a flurry of emails from students afterwards. And I'll just read one extract from one email. So the student said, today's interactive tutorial was by far the most fun exercise I've done at campus throughout these 4 years. Now that's quite a remarkable thing for them to say, and I was quite surprised. She said it would be highly appreciated and enjoyable if we would have many more of these. It was mostly helpful with regards to testing us on what we knew and what we thought we knew well as our weak areas with regards to the work. I assure you that the class really enjoyed it, especially the competitive aspect of the tutorial. So I was quite surprised because students really take the time to pop an email.
So it's unsolicited.
It was unsolicited. So, and then this was just an example of a couple more that I received. They were happy. They seemed to be excited. So someone wrote, "Pardon my colloquialism, but that was awesome." So it was just a 2-line email, but it had quite a nice effect on me as the lecturer as well. That you're feeling that the students are engaging, and I was quite happy that it's having a knock-on effect as well. That the students want to actually try that as well. So there's quite a holistic learning environment that's taking place. And I noted that historically when we had the traditional ways of standing and delivering lecturing, a student picks up the hand, asks the question. It seems like it's a one-way conversation between me and that student that is asking the question, and everybody else uses that as an opportunity to go on. And if the student is persistent and going on with the conversation, it becomes like this one-way conversation between me and the student in the whole class. But now if you use something like Spiral and then there's a comment that pops up, the social media habits of students, if you're seeing something scandalous on Facebook, the first thing you want to do is read the comments. The first thing you want to do is read the comments. And now if the comments pop up here, and then people with the anonymity allows them to comment on that comment. So here, for a change, they can actually interact a lot more with one student's questions. I feel that if you bring their social media habits of, I need to read the comments, I need to comment on that, it adds a little bit of a dynamism. And then they actually can, once they've texted things on the screen that pops up, they can actually want to talk to each other. It opens it up to have an oral conversation as well. It's not just replacing an oral conversation with the texting, but it just gets them to come out of their shell.
And it encourages conversation in a classroom that possibly wouldn't have had conversation. You suddenly see them.
Exactly.
They can't help it, but now they want to get their point out, so they're going to start to actually use real words. So it's a great way to actually encourage that to actually use their voices. I think just picking on two things you said there, which I thought were really exciting. The one is that knock-on effect. Part of the whole thing that in my passion is, finding people like yourselves. I can't reach everyone, but by doing that, you touch a class, and in that class you end up with tutors. You then touch other students, and that's how revolutions happen. Which essentially what we're looking for is some sort of education revolution. We can't carry on like we're doing, and it's amazing to see how quickly the power of a good thing can actually impact lots of people. So I think that's really important. And the other aspect, coming back to where you actually started right at the beginning when you asked the first question why you wanted to do it, it is amazing to see the impact it has on you. To me, there's nothing more fulfilling than to do a session and then get responses, even especially unsolicited. Love that, thank you, that was the best thing I've ever done for, whatever. And you go, wow, that's, and for me, and I'm sure for all of you, that's why you teach. You want that. You want to see people responding and saying, wow, that's just made such a difference. I loved it, and it's exciting. So fantastic. Right, Dusty,
My 2 cents, everything these guys have said, but in the classroom, I suppose the response would be they just came alive instantly. The response was electric, it was instant, total engagement. A lot of students also came up afterwards with great feedback. And what I really liked about the feedback was it's not just that it was fun, because it was fun, but for them it was a very meaningful learning experience, that something had clicked that hasn't clicked for 13 weeks that we've been together. Finally, something has clicked clicked, and a lot of the emails I'm getting now are where they're engaging with past exam questions or the material, and they're actually asking questions about it as well, which is awesome, because I wouldn't have had that response traditionally from a revision lecture. They would have been there just to take a model answer. So it's really nice that it's got them actually seeing how to approach it, and it was a very powerful learning experience for them, and that's been a lot of their feedback. We should have done this from the beginning, and it's the first time I've really seen how things link together. Made me understand how powerful the technology is as a way of teaching.
Right, so if a lecturer comes up to you or someone else comes up to you and says, wow, I heard your students are running around all excited, and they've come to me and they said, we want to do something like this, it's all very overawing for many lecturers. This is the problem with technology. They're like, I don't know where to start, what to do, how to even begin this, and should I go into a course on Moodle, or what should I do? If you had to give someone like one or two simple things to do to get on this journey, what would it be? So maybe Dusty, you can kick off.
Well, I just wanted to say that's exactly how I felt when I came to your training workshop. I thought, this looks great, but I don't think I could ever do it. And then I chatted to you guys at tea, and you were like, no, we've tried it, and it's really easy. And I was like, okay, I can do it too. So my advice would be to just log into the app and try it, because the minute you're in and playing around with it, it is easy and it is fun. And yeah, just do it. Also, the other piece of advice I think is to let go of the idea that you have to have a very structured lesson plan. The second time I tried it, I was a little bit more relaxed, and it flowed so much more, because you can just let the class run with it, and actually that's where the whole thing comes alive. So it doesn't have to follow a strict plan. Sometimes just doing less is more.
Okay, so just let it happen, try something, just step in there, and just
let the students take over, and
goes.
let the students kind of get involved, and it's interesting to see where they take it. And the minute that they're actually doing something with it is where they're actually getting involved and getting excited and starting to learn and make connections for themselves. So don't think that you have to plan out the full 45 minutes. Just be flexible and let it run.
Lovely.
Well, it's easy. It's really easy. So, and you don't have to make an entire lecture, as Dusty said, an entire lecture, an entire lesson plan based on it. You can just incorporate it here and there with your traditional approaches to lecturing. And also it just opens up endless possibilities for you. Prior to coming to these classes and trying out these apps, I didn't know anything about that these apps even existed. I used to think that I screened a little episode of The Simpsons in my maritime law class, and then I had a tutorial based on that. And when Homer Simpson was captured by pirates, etc. So they liked watching the video, and then we had a discussion on that. And I thought, wow, I think I've perfected this kind of blended learning. And I thought, well, I've reached a kind of pinnacle. But now when I came in and I said, wow, okay, there are apps that you can use, there are interactive things, and now this suddenly just, wow, it's opened up endless possibilities for me to experiment in the future. So it's easy, and you can experiment with it. So that's my advice. Just try it.
I love that. I think often people think this is something big. It's an all or nothing. It's and we're not talking about this is e-learning, which is a slightly different concept where everything is online and people are doing their thing, and that's another side of this. Blended learning is bringing some things into your classroom. You don't have to change everything, and it might be one thing, it might be nothing in some lessons. And in Quebec, what Dusty said, just try something. As you say, it is actually easy if you just, and a lot of this approach is, and this has always been my thing, it must be effective and it must be easy. And if it's not those two things, it's just not going to work. And so there are so many, as you said, great tools that are just so easy just to get going, do a little thing, and the response is massive, and then you see the effectiveness immediately.
For me, I think I would tell them that first of all, it lightens their load. It lightens their load a lot, purely because once it goes on one of these apps, you've got more people responding to it. You've got more feedback that you have, because some of these apps allow you feedback instantly afterwards. So you've got more feedback. And for most academics, they've been teaching, so they know the material extremely well. They've been teaching for years here. And so it's not going to be hard to now take that very same material that you know and use it sort of in a way that students want to hear it. So it's not that you're changing anything, but you're realizing that students don't listen the same way anymore or don't communicate the same way anymore. So it's like a lifestyle change, you know, because people now use telephones to communicate. You don't have to keep sending a letter, you know, you don't need to go to the post office anymore. So it's basically that, you know, as evolution happens, being a part of it means that your life actually gets easier just a little bit for you to read on other stuff. So I would just tell them that, you know what, it's easy for you, and it also gives you better feedback in terms of what you are actually doing and how you are doing what you're doing.
One takeaway from the whole experience, what would it be?
Well, this experience has taught me to teach with technology rather than use technology. And that has made a big difference in how I implement blended learning in my coursework and in my studies with my students.
This experience has just been so much fun. It's been a great way to end the year, and it's been fantastic to see the response from students.
This experience for me has just encouraged me to be more innovative, and it makes me want to create more and to create with my students. So it's been a really great experience.
Right, well, thank you everyone. Thank you very much for your time. Hopefully others and staff members who hear this and will be inspired to try it, and I'm sure they can always contact you to find out, you know, where you're at, and by the time they're doing this, you'll be running the session. So, you know, it's very exciting. So thanks everyone for your time. It was much appreciated.
Well, thanks Craig as well, and thanks for sharing all of this with us.
You're welcome.
It was wonderful.
Yeah, just do it.